Well, we use a lot of logic and common sense. I mean, and that's the truth. But one of the things that we focus a lot on is the difference between the conscious mind, and I always point to the front of my head, and the subconscious in the back. So the conscious mind is the mind of intent. I'm going to get sober. And I'll give you an example. And this is what blew my mind. From 1980 until 1996, I woke up every day. I was a teacher of the law of attraction, which now I think is a bunch of crap. And I'll tell you why.
Yeah, I'd love to know that.
Yeah. All my powerful motivational tools that I loved. And for 17 years, I woke up with the same affirmation. I am David of God. I'm David Essel, a child of God, happy, healthy, and sober today. And it was an affirmation, Rob, that was a complete lie. I was not sober from 1980 to 1996, but I said it every day, right? And I was using this old model that my gurus had told me about the power of affirmations, the power of the law of attraction, which is not true.
Right.
Because what the law of attraction says is whatever you put out into this universe must return in kind. So then my question is, well, for 16 years, I put out to the universe with a lot of emotion, I'm sober, and it never got me sober until I actually did the work.
Hello and welcome to another exclusive interview by Recovery Today Magazine at recoverytodaymagazine.com, where first and foremost, we're a magazine of hope. Whether you're considering addiction recovery for yourself or a loved one, or maybe you're actively in recovery a long time or a little while, it doesn't really matter. You're going to find all kinds of information and topics related to addiction, recovery, really living a happy, successful, sober life here at Recovery Today. My name's Rob Hanley. I'm the editor-in-chief, and we always have guests that are really cool that I get excited about. This guest today is a #1 best-selling author. He's a counselor. He's a master life coach, an international speaker, and a minister whose mission is to, this is kind of mind-blowing, to positively affect 2 million people or more every single day in every area of life, regardless of their current circumstances. He is his newest top-selling book called Love and Relationship Secrets That Everyone Need to Know has been labeled as the new Bible on love and communication. His work of 40 years is also highly endorsed by the late Wayne Dyer, Chicken Soup for the Soul's Mark Victor Hansen, as well as many, many other celebrities and radio and television networks around the world. I'm so excited about this today. Our guest is David Essel. David, thank you for jumping on.
Rob, I've been looking forward to this. Recovery is such a huge part of my life, my work. And so to be able to share thoughts and ideas back and forth with someone like yourself, I'm fired up, my brother.
Hey, thank you. I'm familiar with your work, but it occurs to me right now, the elephant in the room is I'm thinking, oh my God, I didn't find out if you pronounce it Essel or Essel. So I don't want to leave it there if I got it wrong. Did I get it right at least?
You got it right. It's David Essel. You nailed it.
All right. Excellent. Well, hey, I know like your bio is enough to have anybody go like, wow, this will be really, really good. I mean, all the credentials, everybody of course knows Chicken Soup for the Soul. I loved Wayne Dyer. I'm very much about, living life by intention and vibration and things like that. But I'm also kind of a practical person. I call the people that are fully there kind of the woo-woo kind of people, and crystals and all this stuff like that. That's great. Sometimes I'm kind of on the other side as well. And so I like the meld of all of it. Your CV, your bio is really, really awesome. Like for those that don't know you or haven't seen your book or can't really identify yet, like, I guess the layup question is, please kind of tell us a little bit of your story and who you are and everything like that.
Yeah, well, I'll go in recovery. I began as an addict at 8 years of age with sugar. Had no idea how powerful sugar was to get me out of angry emotions. I was a very angry child, Rob. A lot of us are super sensitive. A lot of us addicts and alcoholics are super sensitive. My folks did not know how to handle someone with the sensitivity I had. And so we really struggled. I mean, I struggled all through my teen years. And at 12, I was introduced to alcohol. At 13, pot. At 14, cocaine. At 15, acid. And it just went on and on, So that's the beginning of my brilliant life, Rob.
Pretty similar. I love the fact that immediately we're going to go outside kind of the traditional tangent of alcohol and to controlled substance drugs. And we're going to go into a drug that would never be allowed by the FDA. And I say this after I ate, how many almond rokas did I eat yesterday? A friend of mine brought me by a 10 almond rokas, and I think I ate like 12 of them. And I'm supposed to be trying to start keto, but I'll start it tomorrow, right? And then my wife brought home some ice cream, and I had a big bowl of ice cream last night. Like, sugar is addicting, man. Like I say, keto would be very easy for me. The problem is I like sugar.
I know. And, when we're talking about this, and you'll see this at, recovery meetings where people pass around cookies and brownies and all this crap, or caffeine, which is another drug. Or you'll see a lot of people at meetings smoking. Nicotine is another drug. And all we've done is cross addicted, brother. Yeah. That's all we've freaking done. The first year of my recovery, I thought I was doing great. Super sober, going on 12 months. Really, it was a tough year. I don't want to say it was easy. It was tough, filled with anxiety. But what I did was I substituted, and this is God's honest truth, half of a large carrot cake I ate every night.
Oh God. Wow. How fat did you get?
No. And that's the thing, I played Division I basketball. I've always been super fit. It never affected me. Not weight wise.
Half a carrot cake?
Yeah. Wow. But see, sugar hits the same pleasure center of the brain as alcohol.
Yeah.
Sugar numbs emotions just like alcohol does.
Yeah.
So it's the perfect cross addiction substance. And plus we can justify it, Rob. Yeah. It's sugar. It's not a drug. But it is a drug.
Yeah, yeah. They would never allow it today, right? Isn't that what we've all heard, that the FDA would never allow sugar in today?
Yeah, you know what? And the sad thing is, it's in ketchup. It's in brownie. Well, we know it's in brownies. It's in freaking hot dogs. It's in hot dog rolls.
Yeah.
Sugar is freaking everywhere. And, the marketers know and the producers know that when it's just like fat-free foods usually have more sugar than regular food with fat. Right.
Yeah.
And so marketers and producers are not dumb. They know they've got us addicted. But, I had a friend come over who I hadn't seen in a while, and she opened up the refrigerator and she knew I wasn't drinking. She goes, I am so proud of you, for not drinking. And she said, did you have a party last night? And I said, what do you mean? She goes, there's half a carrot cake here. I said, no, I just ate it. And that's when she looked at me and she goes, what? And Rob, this is called denial, right? Yeah. I was in denial. I was switching one drug to another, thinking I'm doing great, and then realizing, and listen, because of my metabolism and my workout, it never affected my weight, but it was not helping my heart health, my triglycerides, my blood sugar levels. It was not a good thing for the body. But it's interesting because once you're an alcoholic or an addict of anything, the brain automatically wants to cross addict to find something similar feeling. Some people get it with emotional spending. Some people get it through affairs, the adrenaline rush. Some people get it through, there's all kinds of ways to get that fix.
Yeah.
But, and that's one of the reasons why when people talk about, I don't ever say how many years I'm sober. I never say it.
Well, that's fair. I'm asking that question.
Yeah. There's a very good reason why. Because of something you said in the beginning. I've worked with people that have been sober 20, 30, 40 years who are dicks.
Yeah.
And I'm going to let that word sit there.
Yeah, you can. We drop an F-bomb or two here, no problem.
Yeah. That are complete dicks.
Mm-hmm.
They're irrational, they're arrogant, they're irresponsible, they're irritable, they're impatient, they're they know it all, they have all the answers. And so I'm not impressed by someone's years of sobriety. I'm impressed by someone who's sober and happy, which is what you said at the beginning when we were talking, that to me is the measurement of recovery, is your joy. The second measurement of recovery is your ability, and this is a therapeutic term, but I'll explain it, your ability to emotionally regulate. And what that means is that, the dry drunk has no emotional regulation, right?
What is that, by the way? What is a dry drunk exactly?
A dry drunk is an alcoholic who's not drinking, but has the same personality characteristics as if they were drinking.
Such as, what would be like some of the biggest ones besides maybe being a dick, I guess? I don't know.
Being a dick is a big one. Arrogant, impatient, know-it-all. They have all these traits, right? Completely judgmental. I mean,
I think I'm kind of a dick sometimes, and I'm actually all of those things. Honestly, too much. But anyhow, I guess maybe I know that, so then I can fix it, right? Maybe it's
Yeah.
not.
So what I would say, you know, for yourself or anyone else that's you know into this, and they go, well, you know, could I have some of these characteristics? I would write down, you know, arrogance, irritability, impatience, the need to be right, the need to be correct, the need to put other people down, you know, all that kind
No,
of.
that's not me. That's
Yeah.
well, me. If I'm driving, I'm definitely it is, because I will say, how do they let stupid people drive? I just don't understand. Like there needs to be. So okay, interesting.
Yeah. So dry drunk, you know, now people dry drunks will brag that they have 17 years of sobriety, but they've been a dick for 17 years. So I'm not impressed, you know, like, and let me go to this point. And this is something that I have a lot of medical professionals disagree with me on. And I have a lot of medical professionals that agree with me on. So I'm right in the middle here.
Okay.
And that is this: genetics does not cause any addiction in the world.
Interesting. Please go on.
There is no such thing as an alcoholic that is caused by genetics. And I'll tell you the answer first, and then I'll come back. If alcoholism was caused by genetics, then the only way you could be sober would be through some medical manipulation of the gene.
Yep.
You couldn't heal a body that was based on a genetic disease unless you did something medical to intervene. And yet, millions of freaking people for hundreds of years have gotten sober with no medical intervention. So we know genes don't cause it. Now,
I like that. I like that. So kind of in our discussion, my philosophy is, and this really isn't like just, hey, let's meet in the middle. My background, my original, I got my degree in computer engineering. And back in the day, we called, there was a thing called like a disk being read writable. Okay. And I have always thought that, I don't really want to say that DNA is dynamic, but I kind of, in that, at least from that model, I subscribe to the theory that, first of all, I think that it's physiological. I think that it's spiritual. I think that it's environmental. And so my personal philosophy is that I think if you were born into, from at the time, you probably would have a propensity to, but I also am really big about, you can break the cycle, and then therefore the next generation, it's not kind of passed on. That's my philosophy.
Well, there is a gene for alcoholism, and we know that. But when I make this statement, and I want to make it very clear, the gene does not cause someone to drink.
Okay.
Our inability to deal with emotions, that's what causes people to drink. Now, that's your inability to deal with peer pressure. So at 12 years of age, I want to be with the 16-year-olds. I drank to be with them. That's called an emotional reason to drink.
Yeah.
If you're angry and you don't know how to deal with it, and you have a drink and you calm down, there's an emotional reason to drink. It wasn't your genes. In other words, when someone says your genes caused you to drink, then that means they got in the car with you.
Yeah.
They drove you to the store. They forced you to walk in. They forced you. That would be a genetic, if there was something driving you.
Yeah.
But, you know, when we help people get sober, and we've helped thousands of people in 40 years get sober, not one of them has ever had to rely on an injection, a pill, or anything medical to stay sober. Now, when I started my pathway to sobriety, Rob, I wanted a pill, a shot, and so I did everything medical I could. Baclofen was very popular back then as an anti-drinking drug to take. Mm-hmm. You know, there's a ton out there. For me, not one of them worked. But what did work was something that everyone knows in the world of recovery. It's called surrendering to someone else's program. Okay. So when we get out of our own arrogance, and we think that, when we finally admit, I can't be a social drinker. Okay. I have 30 years proving I can't be a social drinker. Right. Do I need more time? Right. When we get out of that mindset and we admit we have an issue, the greatest thing in the world is that you may go to a treatment center, or you may not, but you can still get sober. You may go to 12-step, or you might go to rational recovery, which are two totally different philosophies, and you can get sober. So there isn't a pathway, Rob, to sobriety other than the one that works for you. But I want to go back to this stuff about genetics, because what it does is, when people believe that they're now, I have an aunt that died of alcoholism. I've got a whole freaking family history. If I did the gene test, I would come out as a full-blown alcoholic gene. Okay.
Me too.
But I've been clean for years. So how does that equate to genetics? It's called, it doesn't. you know? And so what happens is when we say that my alcoholism was caused by genetics, we're giving everyone a freaking foot out the door. Here's my first excuse for relapse. It's not my fault, it's genetics. And you will hear this crap in 12-step meetings. You will hear people say that they'll either say, well, you know, once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic, which is crap. That's not true, you know? And then they'll do codependent statements. As long as you keep coming back, you'll be sober. That's not true either. That's called codependency. Listen, I've been a recovery coach with any and all addictions for 25, 28 years. I would never tell someone, and if I did, I wouldn't sleep at night, that unless you keep working with me, you're going to relapse. But we've got a program called 12 Steps that says if you keep coming back, you'll never relapse.
Now, for everybody that we had, I kind of told you I was going to jump in. We were talking in the pre-interview and you'd said, is it cool to talk about this kind of thing? And I said, absolutely, it is. So although most of recovery today for 71 issues has been 12-step predominantly. Okay. So we'll talk about things about getting a sponsor and going to meetings and everything like that. We've also gone outside of that a good amount. Our last issue, as I was telling you kind of pre-interview, was all like faith-based conversion. Okay. And then you've got, you know, like you think of like on Seinfeld, the soup Nazi, or maybe it's the 12-step Nazi or something like that. I don't care. And kind of the way that we've set up the magazine is I don't really care how it is that you get there. Okay. And it's not for me really to judge at all. I think that it actually is for you to judge if you're happy and healthy, I think productive, and you're doing something for the good that's, I think at least that everybody would agree is esteemable. And then it's not delusional that it's just you that thinks, well, you know, I'm good, you know, living this horrible way. Anybody else that's sane would agree and say, you know, David's a wonderful person, or Rob is a wonderful person. So we don't really care at all. So as long as you get there, whatever the path is that works for you, predominantly we've been abstinence, 12-step, sponsor, the whole nine, but I don't really care how you get there. I just want to see people get well.
Yeah, well, you know, we have smart recovery, we have rational recovery, we have a 12-step, we've got celebrate recovery, which is faith-based. There's so many different programs. But the reason why I single out 12-step is because how many other businesses today, Rob, are running off a program that was created 80 years ago that was never updated?
Yeah, not very many.
12-step has never been upgraded. So when it first came out, we're working with principles from 80 years ago. Okay. That doesn't make a lot of sense. Like if I asked you, if you owned a car dealership and I said to you, Rob, over the last 80 years, we've added computers and everything else. I want you to run a car dealership like we did 80 years ago. How long would you be in business, Rob?
Yeah, not very long, you know.
And that's why 12-step has a 10% success rate. Yeah. We're working off of principles from 80 years ago that have never been updated. Now, as a therapist, I can tell you my therapeutic work in 40 years has been updated every 6 months. I add new tools. I add new philosophy.
About that a little bit. What do you, I mean, it begs the question, the elephant in the room, like, let's lead right into what is your modality? What do you do? What have you had success with? And then also let's kind of segue into these 2 million people kind of per day, because that's pretty bold and amazing. So I you know, please.
Yeah. Well, you know, we use a lot of logic and common sense. I mean, and that's the truth. But one of the things that we focus a lot on is the difference between the conscious mind, and I always point to the front of my head, and the subconscious in the back. So the conscious mind is the mind of intent. I'm going to get sober. And I'll give you an example. And this is what blew my mind. From 1980 until 1996, I woke up every day. I was a teacher of the law of attraction, which now I think is a bunch of crap. And I'll tell you why.
Yeah, I'd love to know that.
Yeah. You know, all my powerful motivational tools that I loved. And for 17 years, I woke up with the same affirmation. I am David of God. I'm David Essel, a child of God, happy, healthy, and sober today. And it was an affirmation, Rob, that was a complete lie. I was not sober from 1980 to 1996, but I said it every day, right? And I was using this old model that my gurus had told me about the power of affirmations, the power of the law of attraction, which is not true.
Right.
Because what the law of attraction says is whatever you put out into this universe must return in kind. So then my question is, well, for 16 years, I put out to the universe with a lot of emotion, I'm sober, and it never got me sober until I actually did the work. And so we look at my old teachings of how I've updated, and how 12-step and any other program that hasn't updated is so far behind. If I would be teaching what I taught in 1980 today, I would be a dinosaur.
Let me try to guess a little bit. I love the law of attraction. So I want to try to guess. And of course, you tell me if I'm right or wrong. The reason why I'm skinny, I'm rich, I'm sober, something that you're not, okay, is one of my friends a long time ago, he actually wrote a book. It's called the Law of Attraction book, actually. But one of the seminars he did one time, basically he's saying the backside of your mind is saying that's bullshit, because you can see that you're broke and you're overweight and you're unhappy and you're this and that and the other. And so literally what he was saying is that in doing kind of these affirmations, the real part back here is what I think we're kind of going, is saying bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. And you're actually reinforcing, instead of even staying in one spot, you're actually going the wrong direction. And he suggested that you modify it. I'm in the process of, or something like that, that you could say, maybe the subconscious isn't going to say bullshit, but it's going to go, that could be true. I'm not going to say bullshit on that. That could be true. So help me let's kill the law of attraction part. Let's nail that one down. First of all, I'm curious.
Well, you nailed it. We call it a lack of integrity. You're lying to yourself. Okay. So when you're using an affirmation that is a lie, I earn $1 million a year, which is $82,000 a month.
Yep.
There aren't many people in the United States of America that have the gifts, the talents, and the persistence to earn $82,000 a month, Rob.
Yep.
Okay. So you're lying to yourself, which means you have no integrity. And
Yep.
when your friend said you're moving backwards, well, if you lie every day, you are moving backwards.
Yeah.
So in 1996, a great teacher woke me up in a very loving way and told me I was full of crap. And he was right. And I switched. And here's something else very interesting. So I've been writing books for 25 years. For the first, I'd say 18 years, we had minimal sales. The first book that went #1, and the title of it you're going to love because it's exactly what we're talking about. It was called Positive Thinking Will Never Change Your Life, but This Book Will. The myth of positive thinking, the reality of
as a marketer, I like that immediately. I'm like, that's a great title, man. Like, that's a good one right there.
Yeah. And that's the one that broke us out. It became the first #1 bestseller. Now we have 11 books out. It was the first one that hit #1. We started getting celebrities like Jenny McCarthy freaking out on the book, like promoting the hell out of it. And my team was so nervous that I put that book out because they go, you're up against The Secret, the Law of Attraction. And I said, no, I'm not up against anyone. I said, I'm simply stating the truth. And so then what we do in the book is we have New York Times bestselling authors, 6 of them, talk about why the law of attraction and positive thinking is nonsense. And one of them
is it total nonsense, or is it the fact that you're missing one ingredient? You're trying to freaking bake a cake and you got to put flour into it. Is it total nonsense, or
well, from the affirmation, whatever you put out into the world and you return in kind, that's a bunch of crap. Okay. That's just nonsense. Now, if you put out, I'm going to lose 1 pound this year, well, maybe you'll be accurate. Okay. Yeah. But that's not the way they teach you to do the law of attraction. Yeah. I have 6 homes in Bali and I love them all. the $1 million a year thing, 2% of the population earn $82,000 a month. And here we have 200 million people every day waking up saying, I am a millionaire, or whatever their freaking affirmations are, just like mine.
Are we able to be creators, to create things and such like that with our intention? I'm thinking of Wayne Dyer. part of the buy of your intro. So is there something, again, I'm coming back to are we missing flour, or is there no cake?
Well, I think we could say there's a realism with law of attraction, and then there's the fantasy that sells all the books.
Okay.
The realism is that, so I'll give you a realistic look at the law of attraction. So realistically, if you hire an addiction recovery coach, you are moving. Now, here comes the law of attraction. Okay. You're putting money, time, effort into your change. You could attract sobriety.
Yeah.
If you go into a treatment center, now you'll notice the action steps, hiring a person, going. Now, I've been doing interviews for 30 plus years. I've never interviewed a bodybuilder who has ever said that they won on stage via affirmations and vision boards.
Yeah.
Okay. Not yet. I have never interviewed a doctor that said I didn't need to go to medical school for 12 years because I had this amazing affirmation to become a brain surgeon. If you look at the most successful people, they've all done a lot of work, Rob. And the law of attraction, it actually goes into the weakest part of the human brain. And we call it human nature. And
can you visualize that you're a bodybuilder, you're the body that you want, and you're on stage? And then some of the affirmations I used to kind of say was, I would say, I'm happy and I'm grateful now that whatever, but can you add flour in there to say, I'm so happy and so grateful I am whatever body fat, or I won the competition because I work my ass off every single day? Is that possible?
Like if
including today?
Yeah. Okay. If you're eating super clean and you have a traditional bodybuilding training program, and you're not drinking and you're not wasting time, and you're like, if you're really focused, oh my God, a visualization will enhance, but it won't put you on stage without the work. It might enhance your motivation. It might enhance your desire. But if the eating clean and the exercise aren't there, you can screw your affirmations. I don't care what they are. It's not going to work. Harv Eker is an associate of mine. He's a great guy.
I've done all of this stuff. I've done all of Peak Potentials, all of it.
Yeah. All right. And if you really like, when I interviewed him, and I hired him for a day as my business coach. Okay. And it was, we had so much fun.
$200,000 probably or something.
You know what? He was so sweet because I said, I want to hire you ongoing every week. And he said, I'll tell you what, I'll give you one day free. Don't pay me a thing. Let me help you. And basically what it came down to was that he said this. He said, David, he goes, I love affirmations. I love belief systems. I love everything else. He said, but that fantastical thinking stuff is not going to make anyone a millionaire. He said, you're going to have to at some point decide to do the work. So then he asked me a question, what's your goal? And I told him I wanted to double my income in 12 months. And he said, what's your income? And I told him, he said, that's a massive goal. I said, I know I can do it. He goes, I know you can do it too. He said, I have a question for you. Have you done everything in your power in the past before this call to make it happen? And I said, yes. And he said, you're lying. You're lying. If you would have done everything in your power in the past, you wouldn't be on this call. You're not doing something. You're avoiding something. You're not going into it, whether it's prospecting, closing, whatever it is, you're not doing it. And that was one of the greatest wake-up calls, Rob, because I love honesty.
Yeah.
And I love professionals when they're going to call you out and say, that's bullshit, David. You've talked yourself into thinking you've done all you can. But listen, your gifts have proven that you're worthy. You've made a ton of money up till now. There's no reason in the world you shouldn't double your income in a year unless you're not doing something correctly. And that's when I said to him, Harv, that's why I'm working with you. And he goes, our time is up, but let me turn you on to someone else who will work with you, And then what's funny, Rob, is that within the next 12 months, I exactly doubled my income. But I had to work my butt off. Much more than I had the years before. And when he said, you're obviously not doing everything you can, he was right.
I had the pleasure. It's funny because I told you I'm in Seattle. So Harv and Peak Potentials was just up the road in Vancouver, British Columbia from me. And Peak Potentials really just changed it really changed my life. I was already very much into personal development stuff, but I saw him, he came to an event, a small event in Seattle. And I remember getting there kind of late, and I'd seen so many speakers already in my life, and I saw him talk, and I was freaking blown away. I couldn't wait to go to his 3-day event, which he makes about $1 million overall in one weekend. And then from there, we started doing everything. And then the apex for me was I actually got to speak on stage I was marketing international real estate at the time, and I got to speak on stage at 2 of his events. And
Awesome.
yeah, it was pretty cool stuff, man. I really like, of all the people for you to bring up, I really like Harv quite a bit, and I love the community too.
Yeah, yeah. And when we're talking about where Harv came from, it's the same thing with addicts. He came from an upbringing where his dad would make a ton of money and then he would lose it all. And then he'd make a ton of money and then he'd lose it all. And Harv followed his father's footsteps. And until he figured out his own program, Harv made a ton of money. He would lose it all. He'd make a ton of money. So when we're raised in an alcoholic family, a food addict family, a spending addict family, a nicotine family, a drug family, we are behind the 8 ball right from the start. And that's when I'm going to go back to the subconscious mind. From 0 to 18 is the most impressionable time of our lives. And everything that goes on in our environment is stuffed into the subconscious. But unfortunately, we don't have anything to compare it to. So we think it's just normal. Yeah. So if we're raised in a household where mom and dad are constantly fighting, we will create relationships that are fighters because that's what we think is normal. If we see mom and dad drinking every night, we just assume that's normal. Yeah. And so then all of a sudden, so there's a lot of stuff in the subconscious, Rob, that in our holistic addiction, and as a matter of fact, our recovery program is called Holistic Addiction Recovery, because there is not one area of life that we don't cover. Unlike other programs that aren't familiar with amino acid therapy, every freaking addict should be on amino acids.
Yeah, tell me about that. Like, you already got, I'm hooked, man. Like, tell me about amino acid therapy. What's that about?
Yeah, well, when you scramble,
I'm the guy that always says, like, I want some of that.
Exactly.
What's that? Like, okay,
send some. Let me try it.
Yeah.
So, in any kind of addiction, the brain gets scrambled, right? The neurotransmitters get scrambled, belief systems get scrambled, self-esteem, self-confidence goes down, and when our addiction is real, no one in their lives feels good about the addiction. Like, no one is proud that they're a freaking alcoholic, waking up having a shot of vodka to get to breakfast, right? And so what we have to do is we have to say, hey, listen, the brain chemistry has been screwed up for 10, 20, 30, 40, in my case, 30 years. And so I remember going to a treatment center and talking to the medical director, and she said, David, what we hope is that within 2 to 4 years of your sobriety, your brain chemistry will return to normal. Rob, I haven't met anyone whose brain chemistry returns to normal. Okay, I really haven't. But those chemicals, the amino acids I'm talking about, are crucial to help the body compensate for what was taken away during the 30 years of addiction. So one of the most important chemicals in the body to keep us sober is called dopamine.
Yeah.
Dopamine is one of the most powerful feel-good neurotransmitters that you'll ever find, but it's lower in addicts. And even if you're a food addict, your dopamine is lower. Okay, you're an alcoholic. So what we do is we use a product, a supplement called DLPA. It stands for D-L-phenylalanine. Okay. You don't have to worry about the full name, just DLPA.
Yep.
DLPA.
I'm gonna start taking notes, by the way.
Amen, brother. DLPA is probably the most effective over-the-counter supplement to raise dopamine levels, okay? So, like I've been taking this stuff for over 20 years. I'll tell you all the amino acids, why I take them. And I had a guy the other day, he's only 3 weeks sober. He sends me an email. He's in my program. He sends me an email and he goes, this DLPA is a godsend. He said, it is literally opening my mind to the fact that I can be in a good mood, that I can feel good about myself. And he said, and here's another thing, it's cut back on my caffeine intake, because a lot of addicts start to ramp up, their energy drinks and the coffee they drink.
I drink a lot of coffee.
Yeah. And so dopamine will help decrease that, because it gives us what coffee does, the alertness, right? That one of the beautiful things about dopamine is that it makes you feel so good.
Yeah.
Heroin makes you feel so damn good, right? Cocaine, I mean, all dopamine.
Yeah. And ecstasy. I used to love ecstasy.
Perfect. Then we go to tyrosine as the second most important amino acid. Tyrosine also works within the dopamine system, but it works a little differently. Tyrosine is all about focus. So DLPA lifts your mood. Tyrosine increases your focus. So now you have two of the most powerful neurotransmitters in the body being lifted, serotonin and dopamine. And it gives you a much better chance to decrease relapse than to try to do it on your own. You know, and I want to repeat
And
this.
we can't get these things from foods, I assume, because you'd have to eat 3 bushels of tomatoes or something silly like that, right?
Yeah, yeah. You know, it's like, and then we'll go to tryptophan, you know, which is in turkey, right? It's a relaxant.
That's what puts you to sleep on Thanksgiving, right?
Well, it doesn't, but that's what's interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll tell you that in a second. So when we look at this supplement, now it comes out in a supplement called 5-HTP. 5-HTP is a powerful relaxant. And, you know, we recommend, and let me go back a second. If you're on any anti-anxiety drugs like Xanax, Klonopin, clonazepam, if you're on any antidepressants, Wellbutrin, Paxil, Prozac, etc., do not take any amino acids until you've spoken to your doctor.
Okay.
Crucial.
Oh.
Okay, they'll interact with each other and they're going to defeat each other's purpose. It's an absolute waste of time. So be super careful. Then we go into 5-HTP. So, you know, if you're a quote unquote normal alcoholic that didn't drink during the day, evening is your trigger. You know, so you come home from work and all of a sudden, so instead of having a drink, we say take 50 to 100 milligrams of 5-HTP, which boosts serotonin through the roof, which relaxes the body. Now let's go back to Thanksgiving. You would have to, as you mentioned earlier, you'd probably have to eat 10 turkeys to get the amount of tryptophan or 5-HTP to feel relaxed.
Yeah.
But what makes you feel sleepy is the fat, the salt, the sugar.
And then I ate about 6,000 calories probably. Yeah.
In an hour.
Yeah, in an hour, yeah.
You know, so when you put all that heavy food into your body is going to slow down because of the work to digest it.
Sure.
And that's the feeling. People blame it on turkey, but it's the gravy, the mashed potatoes, the stuffing, and the pumpkin pie is what's doing it.
Right. Right.
So, you know, those are probably 3 of the most important supplements.
Called biohacking? Is this kind of, I mean, I know there's a lot of people that are self-described biohackers.
Yeah.
Is that, I mean, it sounds kind of like it.
It's similar. You know, what we're trying to do is we're trying to find the simplest way possible to get back to a normal functioning brain.
In your program, is this one of the cornerstones or is this like one?
Oh my God. You know, everyone is on amino acids in my program, unless they're on an antidepressant or anti-anxiety. And then I'll talk to the doctor about switching out and titrating down whatever they're on pharmaceutical and adding the amino acids. And believe it or not, Rob, a lot of doctors today are very open to this.
What do you do if somebody needs to detox? Do you use like a Suboxone or something like that? Or are you all natural? What's your philosophy on that kind of stuff?
You know, I love Suboxone for any heroin addicts or opiate addicts. I think Suboxone is awesome, but I only allow them on it for 6 months. The first 4 months at full strength, whatever their doctor recommends. And then I ask the doctor to titrate them down the last 2 months. So at the end of 6 months, they're not on it anymore. Now, we've got tons of different supplements that we can add to help people. You know, Kratom is one that has done really well.
Oh my God, you can't talk about, so, okay, that's interesting. You know, Kratom is a lightning rod you know, I've asked people before because we've had people actually ask us to run ads for Kratom and I don't have any experience with it. And, you know, it was too much of a lightning rod and people said, you know, really honestly, do you want to be, whatever it is, you really want to run an ad on Kratom and then have, you know, people go like, so do tell.
Yeah. You know, well, Kratom is powerful because it does reduce cravings for opiates. That's the number one thing.
It's addictive, though, too, isn't it? Or are we going to say it's addictive like caffeine is addictive or nicotine is addictive?
You know what? Kratom is addicted only if you abuse it.
Okay.
And same thing with Valium. You know, if like let's say a doctor prescribes Valium for you and you go ahead and you do double the dosage. All right, pretty soon you're going to want it to triple the dosage and because that's the way the drugs are made.
Yeah.
If you stay at the original dosage and you stay there and you don't move off of it, the chance of you continuing to escalate your addiction to Valium decreases dramatically. And I'm not encouraging people to get on Valium. I'm just using it as an example.
What about CBD? What is your philosophy? What is your, no?
You know, we have not seen hardly anything with CBD in regards to serious anxiety, serious insomnia, serious whatever. And, and now that we have medical marijuana all over the country that are producing pretty pure CBD oils, they did an article on Amazon.com and they found that 90% of CBD sold there was not CBD.
It's psychotropic.
And so what we say is, okay, great. Now we have the medical marijuana dispensaries.
Yeah.
And so we asked our clients that liked CBD, we're trying to see if it would work, to switch to the medical marijuana dispensary so they were getting pure CBD.
Yeah.
Now, it only in our case, Rob, this doesn't mean it doesn't work for other people.
Sure.
But in our clients, we have not seen a dramatic change when people are on CBD when it comes to addiction recovery. Now, I've had people say their arthritis has disappeared or diminished greatly, their joint pain has diminished greatly, but I have never heard any of them talk about CBD calming them, taking away the cravings, the things that we hear happen. We just haven't seen it in our practice. It doesn't mean it doesn't work. We just haven't seen it, Rob.
So what about, kind of coming back around, I want to stay, if we can, for a moment here on the cornerstone on these amino acids. I love the movie Limitless, right? So you probably already know where I'm going. So that's part of my question, but then also my question to, tell on myself a little bit. And for those who've seen some of the interviews, I've been pretty pretty transparent that for me, personally, not drinking or doing drugs is, it's not even something I think about at all. But the challenge that I have had, and I even try to say those words actually intentionally as well, because I don't want to have something. But the challenge that I have had since my 20s was, periods of really bad depression, anxiety, fear, paralyzing, analysis, paralysis, procrastination, which I tend to think all of them are kind of symptoms of the same kind of thing. And so I have often thought to myself, and sometimes I have thought, well, this is a cross that I bear. It's really difficult living in a place where we're still on lockdown, by the way, because my medication for depression was to get into the gym and work my ass off.
Right.
And in this thing, I put on pounds. I'm not happy about it, but I would go and sweat, and then I would release endorphins, which made me feel freaking great. Probably looking in the mirror creates a biofeedback loop, or how people interact with you.
Right.
So I would think to myself about depression, and I would think, this sucks. Like, it sucks that I feel I have to work really hard to not feel sad and shitty, and then I would look on the other side of it and I'm like, well, it makes me get in shape or something like that. Like, not to feel great, but like, I would think to myself, why is it that it seems my natural disposition is to be freaking sad? Like that sucks. So is there something with someone like me potentially that you're deficient in? Is there a way? Is there some kind of combination of something that you can, then I looked to reframe it a different way. And I thought, God, I wonder if there's some supplements I could take that would make me naturally happy. And that would be, then I'd have to have a shitty day to feel kind of like normal, like everybody else. Is that fairyland?
No, you're talking about dual diagnosis, which every addict is a dual diagnostic patient. Okay. That means that every addict is using the medication to cover up anxiety, depression, low self-confidence, low self-esteem, fear, insecurity, fear of criticism, fear of rejection, fear of abandonment. Okay. So we all have the same shit, Rob. Everyone has a dual diagnosis. It always begins between 0 and 18. That's the therapeutic David Essel coming out, but it's really true.
Yeah.
All right. So when you have modeled the behavior from 0 to 18, it becomes your personality. Let's say from 0 to 2, you didn't have that personality. Like, I was an angry child, right? I was a very angry child. I'm going to probably say starting at around 4. And there's reasons for it. It wasn't just because I was angry. There was stuff going on in the home. There were things. And because I'm so sensitive, I wanted to talk. And in our family, bless my parents, who are awesome human beings, like, they understood happiness, but they didn't understand how to allow a sensitive child to talk about anger, rage, insecurity, hurt, rejection at school, rejection in sports, and all these. There was no place for me to speak.
Mhm.
So I became angry. Well, what's underneath anger is depression. What's underneath depression is sadness. What's underneath sadness is low self-confidence and low self-esteem. So we are all dual diagnosed, which is why I'm such a fan of the program we've created, because the amino acids help to do what the brain can't do on its own. Like, we've been conditioned by our own beliefs, activities, thoughts, and words to be in the mindset that you and I are in. Like, every once in a while, I'll have a panic attack, and it'll come at 2 in the morning, and I'll lose my breath. I've written about it in some of my books. It's the worst experience in the world, and we don't have an origin of it. Like, they're like, nothing happened the day before, the week before, the month before.
5G, man, it's 5G.
So I go, okay, well, the very first thing I do when people are working with me in addiction recovery is, as I mentioned, we get them on amino acids as soon as possible. And then we go into what's the struggle that we haven't dealt with? What are the emotions that we haven't dealt with? Resentment, rage, anger. Could be at your parents, your grandparents, your brothers and sisters. But we believe, without a doubt, that all addictions are caused by our inability to deal with life emotions. Every addiction in the world is caused that we don't know how to deal with the stress. We don't know how to deal with the abandonment, the divorce. We don't know how to deal with, I had a woman, had never drank in her life. At 44 years of age, she came home to a note from her husband on the kitchen table. It said, "The divorce papers are coming. You'll never see me again." And she, in her report to me, had no idea there was something wrong with the marriage. She never saw her husband again. That night, a next door neighbor heard her crying, and she came over, brought over 2 bottles of wine. And that's all it took. Because she didn't know how to deal with abandonment and the rage inside her and the sadness and the loss, she ended up finding out that alcohol allowed her to survive without dealing with her issues. When she came to me, her stomach had already been pumped out. She had the highest alcohol limit in the state that she was in ever recorded. They couldn't believe she was alive. And a year later, she was completely sober, completely sane, completely on a new pathway. And the number one thing we did outside of the supplementation is that we got her into a mindset. We changed all of her belief systems about her ability to handle abandonment, her ability to handle rejection, her ability to handle anger, rage, sadness. So it took a long time to teach her how to deal with each of these emotions. And in our course, Rob, we have tools for every emotion. So if someone never, yesterday I was doing a session with a guy, and he said, he goes, "I'm just really pissed off all the time." And I said,
I go through periods like that where I just feel, actually, it's been a lot in this pandemic thing. Now, I know I told you East Coast, West Coast, Florida, Washington, 2 different universes, for the most part. Currently right now, pretty much everything's shut down except for the big stores. Pisses me off. I'm very angry about it, honestly. Yeah. And I'm not only angry about what I can't do, go to the gym or something like that. Personally, I'll just say it. I think this is all bullshit, man. I tell people I have PFS. I've got pandemic fatigue syndrome. I am over this shit. I'm so, I don't mean to be cruel or anything like that, but it's just, the cure is too much. It's too much. So I go through periods, even I can talk about, get pissed when I think about it, but I go through periods, not just with this, but it's happened a lot. And then I go through like, well, there's nothing I can do about it. I have to just accept it. And what am I going to just be pissed off all the time? So I can really relate to being majorly pissed.
Yeah.
So anyhow.
But and what's missing there is a word I used before, and that's emotional regulation. And that's a big part of our course. We teach you how to take your anger, dissipate it, turn it into something totally different, which every alcoholic and addict needs to know how to do.
That's cool.
I did a video on YouTube, and it's called, what's the one thing that all happy people have in common? It's emotional regulation. And let me give you a story. And this comes from—
That's good, man. I like that.
Yeah. So a former mentor of mine who died this year, his name was Ram Dass. Ram Dass was one of the biggest leaders in the 70s and 80s in the movement of spirituality in the US. He was a former professor at Harvard. He got kicked out of Harvard because him and Timothy Leary, another professor, were
LSD guy. Yeah.
Yeah, we're giving students acid and then doing meditations, right? And they were having phenomenal results. I mean, incredible results. It wasn't playtime LSD. It was LSD with a purpose to connect to God. You know, it was amazing work, right? But Ram Dass, around 1980, says to me, well, you know, as a counselor, you understand emotional regulation. And I said, yeah. He said, but I don't think you understand it deep enough. And these are the people I love, Rob, you know, the teachers in the world that look at you and say, hey, I can help you understand that more. So he gave me this great story. He goes, let me tell you what emotional regulation really looks like. Two people are going to the airport. They're in the same city. They get up at the same time. They have 3 hours before their flight leaves. There's plenty taken care of. They're about half an hour from the airport and there's a massive accident. They both turn on their radios. They're in separate cars and they hear the accident is delaying traffic for 3 to 4 hours. They automatically both know they're going to miss their flight. Okay, the emotionally regulated human being slaps his hand on the dashboard, goes, ah, shit. Then he picks up his phone and he rebooks his flight for the next day. Okay, so he expresses emotion, but he doesn't get stuck there. He does something to move past that frustration. So he's proactive.
Yep.
A non-emotionally regulated person smashes on a dashboard, goes, God damn it. You know, what the hell's happened? I got up early. He calls his friends. Do you believe this? You know, this is the time. Then he calls someone else and he calls someone else and he calls someone else and he's mad the rest of the day.
Why does this shit always happen to me?
Yeah, exactly. He becomes the victim.
Sucks. Yeah.
He's the victim, right? Yeah. So in our program, we teach this as one of the most key cornerstones. Is that when you learn emotional regulation, I can guarantee you can work through any freaking issue. Addiction will never be a part of your life again because it's that ongoing, uninterrupted anger, rage, disappointment, frustration that leads us to a relapse. Now, it may not be a relapse to our drug of choice. It could be to sugar, caffeine, anger, righteousness, pornography. It could be to anything else.
Yeah.
You know? So emotional regulation is the key. And if I'm going to share the two most important points here, Rob, that very few people talk about in addiction recovery, it's amino acid supplementation and emotional regulation. And if you don't have those two things down, recovery can be a real bear. And, you know, being sober and not happy is not where we want people, you know?
What's the point, man? You know, like, I mean, you know, what's the point to get sober and then just be, and then your goal is just to be sober? Like, I'm kind of the belief, you know, kind of going back a little bit to the DNA part of it, that there, you know, my two children could not be more different. And I'm sure everybody could go, oh, yeah, that's the same for me or something like that. But I tend to, so my son, it was diagnosed ADD. And, you know, probably around, I don't know, 5th grade or 6th grade. So he got on medication. He's not anymore. But, you know, I try to frame things like ADD or the addictive brain or whatever for him or for anybody else. A lot of the articles you write, I try to frame it around superpowers. Like, you have this ability. I don't want to frame it in some kind of like a deficit. Like, you got to look at it like it's a little bit different. Like, your brain's a little different. You might be scattered in some ways or whatever, but you have the ability to do these. I want to frame it in some kind of a way, you know, not necessarily like Rain Man where it's very extreme, you know, but stuff in that kind of a context, and that we find our way into addiction. I think it's just kind of, for the most part, because we can't express this great, or we can't target or identify what a goal is. That's kind of what I don't know whether am I off base on any of that or.
Well, I think with ADD, which, you know, I have at a very high level, I found a way to put it to my advantage. And that's what I help people do. I created a career that every hour is different. So I do the interview with you. My next client is going to be something totally different. The next hour is totally different. So I'm never bothered by ADD because I do everything in short periods of time, no more than an hour a session. And when I write a book is the only time that I put in more than an hour on anything. But what I've found is that if I have a day that constantly changes, I don't have ADD anymore. Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah.
But you know, that I tried twice to work for a company. One time I lasted 4 months, and one time I think I lasted 2 months. To sit and to be in a cage, which is what I call an office, a cage, just doesn't work for my personality type. But like right here, I'm sitting doing this interview with you. Most of my counseling sessions that are on the phone, I'm pacing. Rob, I'm pacing I'm in my pool doing this. I'm pacing inside the living room. You know, I'm moving. I don't even know I'm moving. I mean, I'll have a partner say, do you know that for the last 3 hours, you haven't stopped pacing? I'll have 3 straight hours of sessions, right? Yeah. And I'll go, no, I didn't even recognize. I'm in my flow. I'm having a blast. There's nothing that ADD has done to hold me back. So what we try to share with people is that most of us, I mentioned dual diagnosis. You know, if you don't have depression or anxiety, you may have ADD, you may have ADHD, there could be a whole bipolar, there could be a whole bunch of different conditions that need to be monitored in order to keep us in sobriety.
Yeah. Really, really fascinating stuff. You know, I told you kind of in the pre-interview that I could talk, I could monopolize your time all day. I love talking about this kind of stuff. I mean, I feel like we just scratched the surface because we really did, of course. But how can people learn? I want to learn more about emotional regulation. I, want to get, I got a little shopping list here for Amazon for my DLPA, my Tyrosine, 5-HTP, some of the stuff I probably none of the things maybe that I take, but how do people connect with you? And how do they learn more about some of these kind of things as well?
Yeah, Rob, it's so easy. The website is talkdavid.com because that's all I freaking do is talk. So talkdavid.com, really easy to remember.
You're living at it, right?
You know, it's phenomenal. And we work with clients from all over the world, Australia, London, US, Canada. We've got them from everywhere. And, if someone's interested, just go to talkdavid.com. You can find the addiction recovery program that we teach. You can learn all about it. Of course, all of our 11 books are there. And if you're struggling in some other area of life, maybe you feel you've mastered your addiction, but your relationship sucks. We work on relations. There isn't anything we don't work on in the world of personal growth. We can help people achieve anything at talkdavid.com.
So cool. So cool. I want to be very aware now that we've kind of talked about these hour blocks as I'm seeing, okay, it's been about an hour. Otherwise I would keep you, by the way, I do my best. But I just want to thank you for this. I'm really enthused. As I told you before we started, I was really excited to talk with you. We don't really have anything that's kind of taboo that we can kind of broke down some 12-step barriers and some things like that. We got into this really good stuff, man. I really, really appreciate you taking the time to come out and to share with our audience, to share with me as well.
Oh, you're welcome, Rob. I really enjoyed your questions. I love that you're open-minded and you're not in a box, because recovery can't be in a box. The minute we say it's this, it's going to change tomorrow. We need to be very fluid in recovery.
Everybody is different, and
yes,
we ourselves are different today than yesterday. I know I am, so it's a dynamic kind of deal. So,
yeah. And it's exciting to know that no matter how long you've struggled, you can heal. Like, that's the most exciting thing to me.
Isn't it?
Like, oh,
it really is the miraculous power of redemption of the body, of regeneration. The fact that as long as you're not pushing up daisies, life is dynamic. You can make one decision today that is different than, you can affect and change your outcome. I mean, it's very hopeful, and it's also terrifying on the other side as well, because you could, make a decision that's not going to be empowering to you. So I appreciate you jumping on. This has been really informative, and it's got my dopamine going as well. So
that's awesome, Rob. Hey, thank you for the opportunity, and any chance, anytime in the future, just reach out to TJ and we'll do it again, Rob.
I will more. I absolutely, I'm going to do that for sure. This is great stuff. People need to know more of you. Our audience needs to know more of you. So thanks again.
You got it. You have a good day.
Thank you. Now, this has been another exclusive interview by Recovery Today Magazine at recoverytodaymagazine.com.